Your project is nothing but a waste of time, my mother sneered, her voice sharp enough to slice through the heavy silence of the dining room. She leaned back in her chair like a judge handing down a sentence, lips curled in disdain as if I'd just confessed to a crime against the family. I stayed still, watching her eyes gleam with that same cold pride she always saved for my brother. For years she never missed an opportunity to remind me I wasn't enough. Not smart enough, not ambitious enough, not worthy enough. And here she was again, laughing at the ashes of what she thought was another one of my failures. But failure has a funny way of rewriting itself. Because just as her words poisoned the air, my phone lit up in my lap. I glanced down. One notification. A single line that felt like thunder in my chest. Quantum tech patent approved. Bidding starts at $2.7 billion. In that instant the world shifted. I felt my lips curve into the smallest smile. The kind that doesn't just belong to you. It carries the weight of every insult, every dismissal, every whispered "you're wasting your life" that was ever hurled your way. I raised my eyes to her, steady, calm, almost gentle. "About that signature," I murmured, the words rolling out like velvet over steel. She froze. The pen in her hand hovered mid-air, inches from the contract she thought was hers to own. My father looked up too, brows furrowed. My brother, the golden child, scoffed, confused, as if he couldn't compute a world where I had the upper hand. The chandelier above us flickered, its light spilling shadows across their faces, catching the sharp lines of fear, doubt, and arrogance colliding. I could hear the tick of the antique wall clock, loud and merciless, counting down to the moment they would realize what they had lost. My chest tightened, not with fear but with something colder, sharper. For the first time the silence was mine. For the first time I didn't feel like their daughter. I felt like the storm they had raised but never saw coming. If this ever happened to you, say, same in the comments. Because that was the moment I stopped being the disappointment at their table. That was the moment I became the signature they would regret. And little did they know, the real story hadn't even started yet. The pen slipped from her hand and hit the table with a dull clink. My mother's lips parted but no sound came out. My father adjusted his glasses, squinting at me like I was speaking in another language. And my brother, smug, entitled, born with a silver spoon he never polished, leaned forward with a laugh that was already breaking under its own weight. "What are you talking about?" he scoffed, shaking his head. "You don't have a patent. You can't even hold down a job. Stop pretending." The room pressed in tighter. I could smell the faint tang of ink from the unsigned contract on the table. They thought it was theirs. My work, my blood-soaked nights coding alone in the glow of a flickering monitor. The research I had built on stolen coffee and sleepless years. To them it was just another thing they could sign away. But the notification still burned on my phone screen like scripture. Bidding starts at $2.7 billion. I leaned forward, letting my gaze linger on my mother's face. "Do you remember when you told me I was wasting my 20s? That I should focus on something useful, instead of chasing ideas no one cared about?" My voice was calm even, but every word landed with the weight of years. "Turns out the world disagreed with you." My father cleared his throat. "You're exaggerating. That's impossible. $2.7 billion. His voice cracked over the number like it was forbidden. I tilted my head. "Impossible? Or just inconvenient for you?" For the first time I watched fear flicker behind his eyes. A subtle shift, like a man suddenly realizing the ground beneath him isn't solid. My brother shoved his chair back. "No one's going to pay you that. If there's money on the table, it belongs to all of us. Dad, tell her. That's family property." Family property. The words tasted bitter. I almost laughed. They had ignored me, mocked me, dismissed me. And now, the moment my work was worth something, suddenly it was theirs. I sat back, folded my hands, and let silence hang like a blade. The chandelier light gleamed off the contract, still unsigned, trembling in my mother's grip. They had no idea the storm had already passed and they were standing in its wreckage. Because I wasn't here to argue anymore. I was here to watch them unravel. My brother's voice rose, shrill and desperate. "This isn't hers to keep. She lived under our roof. Ate our food. Every dollar she touched came from Dad's wallet. That makes this ours." His words dripped entitlement, the kind you can't teach. It has to be bred into someone, spoon-fed over years of favoritism. My mother finally found her voice, sharp and venomous. You think you've outsmarted us? That money belongs to this family. You wouldn't have made it a single step without us. Don't you dare walk out of here thinking it's yours alone. I stared at them, steady, my pulse strangely calm. The same hands that once trembled under their judgment now rested motionless in my lap. My phone was still lit, the notification glowing like a lighthouse through fog. Bidding starts at $2.7 billion. I worked in basements. I lived off instant noodles. I coded until my vision blurred. Tell me, I whispered, leaning in, where were you then? My father's chair creaked as he shifted uncomfortably. For once he didn't answer. But my brother? He never knew silence. We'll challenge this, he said, eyes gleaming with greed. Lawyers will prove you owe us. We'll freeze your accounts. Don't think you're walking out of here with a dime. I felt something shift inside me, not panic, not fear. It was colder, heavier. A realization. They weren't just mocking anymore. They were plotting. And the truth was, I expected it. I had known deep down the moment my project had value they would come for it. They always did. The chandelier hummed above us, its light swaying ever so slightly. The contract on the table fluttered in the draft from the open window, as if the papers themselves knew they were worthless now. You can try, I said, my voice smooth as glass. But you'll lose. Because for once in your lives, you underestimated me. Their faces cracked, not broken yet, but the fissures were forming. In that moment I wasn't the girl they dismissed. I wasn't the daughter they pitied. I was the storm they had mocked for too long, and now it was breaking over their heads. The room went still. No one moved. No one breathed. And in that silence I knew, the war had just begun. That night I barely slept. The house still smelled of polished wood and my mother's perfume, but in my head, all I could hear were their voices replaying like a broken record. It belongs to us. Family property. Lawyers. Freeze her accounts. By morning the war was already in motion. My inbox filled with messages from firms I'd never contacted, all conveniently tied back to my father's business associates. My brother even had the audacity to text me, sign over 60%. It'll save everyone trouble. 60%. They thought they could buy me out of my own blood. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the pale sunlight cutting across the floorboards. My laptop's screen glowed with the patent certificate, my name etched across it like armor. I traced my fingers over it and let myself breathe. They weren't taking this from me. Not now. Not ever. I drafted emails carefully, methodically. Reached out to investors directly, locking in bids. My lawyer, a quiet, sharp-eyed woman I'd hired months before, sent me a single reassuring line. They don't have a case. Stand firm. Still, I knew my family wouldn't stop. My mother's pride was too wounded, my brother's greed too loud, my father's silence too complicit. That evening the phone rang. Her voice sliced through before I could even say hello. You've embarrassed us. Do you understand? The whole family is talking. Do the right thing or we'll destroy you. I let her words hang there. I looked out the window at the streetlights flickering on, each one steady, brighter than the last. Funny, I finally said. That's exactly what I've been waiting for. The line went silent. I imagined her lips tightening, her nails tapping the arm of her chair. Because for the first time in my life she didn't hold the blade. I did. And I was just learning how sharp it really was. The next blow came fast. By morning whispers had turned into headlines. An article appeared on a local business blog, thinly veiled, but sharp enough to wound. Patent owner under family dispute, credibility in question. My brother's fingerprints were all over it. He had always loved using gossip as a weapon. I scrolled through the comments, bile rising in my throat. Strangers dissected my life, calling me selfish, reckless, ungrateful. And I could almost hear my mother whispering to neighbors, weaving her version of the story, painting me as the traitor daughter, the one who dared to betray her own blood. For a moment my chest tightened. I almost let the weight of their voices crush me again. Almost. But then my phone buzzed. Another email, another bid. Numbers climbing higher, faster, louder than their noise. $3.1 billion. $3.50. The storm outside their window was growing into a hurricane, and they were still trying to fight with umbrellas. That night I met with my lawyer in a glass-walled office downtown. The city lights reflected in her eyes as she slid a folder across the table. Inside, proof. Every email, every threat, every attempt they made to seize what wasn't theirs. You have leverage, she said calmly. Use it. Don't hide. Go public before they bury you. Her words struck like a match. For years I'd been silent, shrinking whenever my family spat on my name. But silence was their weapon, not mine. So I spoke. The next morning I released a statement, clear, sharp, undeniable. I told the truth. About the years of dismissal, the years of being called worthless, the sudden claws they sank into me when money appeared. I attached receipts, screenshots, dates. The internet did the rest. By noon the narrative had flipped. Comments shifted. Strangers became allies. She built it herself. They're parasites. Finally someone said it. And somewhere in the hollow halls of my childhood home, I knew they were watching the tide turn against them. Because for the first time in their lives, their voices weren't the loudest anymore. Mine was. The silence from their side didn't last long. By the second day my brother broke. He called me, his voice raw, frantic but still laced with arrogance. Delete it. All of it. You think you're smart but you've just ruined our name. Investors are calling Dad nonstop. Do you have any idea what you've done? I let him rant, pacing my living room as his voice cracked through the speaker. The city outside was alive, horns blaring, lights flickering across high-rise windows. Life was moving forward. Unlike them, I wasn't stuck. You ruined your own name, I replied, steady, cold. I just stopped covering for it. The line went dead. Within hours the backlash began. Old allies of my father distanced themselves publicly. My mother's carefully curated image of control slipped. Neighbors whispered about her cruelty, church friends sent me quiet messages of support. And my brother? He spiraled online, firing back with posts that only made him look smaller, angrier, desperate. But beneath their rage I felt something darker stirring. A cornered animal doesn't beg. It bites. That evening a letter arrived. Hand-delivered. A formal notice. Intent to sue for intellectual property misappropriation. Their signatures lined the bottom. My own family united against me. For a moment I held the paper in my hands, fingers trembling, heart pounding in my ears. I thought of every night hunched over blueprints, every tear dropped onto my keyboard, every time I begged them to just see me. And then, like steel cooling in water, my fear hardened into resolve. I called my lawyer. She answered on the first ring. They've made their move, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Good, she replied. How we make ours. The war wasn't whispers anymore. It was ink on paper, filed in courts, carried in headlines. But what they didn't understand was that every step they took to destroy me only exposed them more. They hadn't just underestimated me. They had overplayed their hand. And for the first time I was almost grateful. Because now I had everything I needed to end this. The courtroom smelled of old wood and cold air. Every footstep echoed like a warning. My parents sat at the plaintiff's table, their postures stiff, their faces sculpted into masks of dignity. Beside them my brother shifted restlessly, his tie crooked, eyes darting like a child caught cheating. I sat alone, save for my lawyer, calm, razor-sharp, her gaze locked on the judge as if this were just another chess match. But for me it was more than a game. It was my entire life, my voice, my worth on trial. They spoke first. My mother's testimony dripped with theatrics. We supported her, fed her, guided her. This project would not exist without the foundation we provided. It belongs to the family. My brother added his venom. She never respected us. She stole resources. She's trying to cut us out when we built her. Every word was a blade twisted deeper. Yet as they spoke, the evidence folder my lawyer had prepared burned like fire in front of me. When it was my turn I stood. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't break. I worked in basements, I said, meeting the judge's eyes. I coded until my fingers blistered. I ate instant noodles for years while my family called me a failure. They mocked me. They dismissed me. And the moment my work held value, suddenly it became theirs? Respectfully, no. This patent is mine. Gasps rippled through the courtroom when my lawyer displayed the exhibits. The texts, the threats, the headlines my family planted. Each one landed like a hammer, shattering their polished facade. My mother's jaw tightened. My father's eyes darted downward. My brother's face flushed red, his anger unraveling in real time. The judge's gavel hit would once, sharp and final. Decision will be rendered tomorrow. Court adjourned. As the crowd shuffled out, I caught my mother's gaze. For the first time I saw it, not superiority, not control. Fear. They had thrown everything at me. And for once it wasn't enough. I walked out of that courtroom lighter, sharper, almost untouchable. Because tomorrow the world would know who I truly was. The next morning the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Cameras flashed outside the doors, journalists scribbling headlines before the verdict was even read. My family arrived together, stiff and silent, their unity cracking at the edges. I sat across from them, spine straight, hands folded. I didn't need noise. I had truth. The judge's voice rang out, steady, absolute. After reviewing the evidence, this court finds no legal basis for the plaintiff's claim. The patent and its proceeds belong solely to the defendant. For a moment the air stood still. My brother's mouth fell open, outrage choking him into silence. My father lowered his head, shame written across every line of his face. My mother. She simply froze as though her body couldn't process the word defendant. It was mine. The crowd erupted, the sound rushing through me like thunder. Reporters swarmed, cameras clicked, but I heard none of it. All I heard was the faint tick of the clock above the bench, steady and certain, as if marking the end of a long, brutal storm. As I walked out, sunlight spilled across the marble steps, blinding and warm. My lawyer whispered, "You've won. They can't touch you anymore." But victory wasn't about the billions or the headlines. It was the silence that followed me home, soft and clean, no longer filled with their voices calling me worthless. For the first time the quiet felt like freedom. That evening I sat by the window of my apartment, the city glowing beneath me, the patent framed on my desk. I thought of every night I had begged them to believe, of every insult I had swallowed. And then I thought of this moment, where their scorn had forged my resolve, where their cruelty had become my fire. Revenge hadn't been loud. It hadn't been violent. It had been patient. Precise. They tried to erase me. Instead they carved my name deeper than they ever could. I smiled, whispering to the empty room, about that signature. And with that the story closed.